My girlfriend and I, having been in a relationship for approximately 2 years, made the joint decision to embark on an extensive vacation to Italy spanning 2 weeks. Eagerly anticipating the trip, I, being in a slightly better financial situation than her, took it upon myself to cover all associated expenses, be it flights, accommodations, or any other costs. My rationale behind this gesture was simple. By shouldering the financial burden, both of us could unwind and fully immerse ourselves in the experience without fretting over money matters. For the majority of the trip, everything proceeded splendidly. We marveled at breathtaking sights, indulged in delectable cuisine, and overall reveled in each other's company. However, the harmony was abruptly disrupted on the final day when she blindsided me with an unforeseen revelation. Expressing her desire to prolong her stay in Italy solo, she conveyed a need for solitude to introspect and contemplate our relationship. What caught me off guard the most was the complete absence of any prior indication or discussion regarding such sentiments, neither before nor during our journey. This revelation left me deeply unsettled, as it signified a significant development to which I had not been privy until the 11th hour. Fueled by a mix of hurt and frustration, I countered by suggesting that if she genuinely felt the need for solitary reflection, assuming financial independence during this spontaneous extension of her stay would be a logical step. Essentially, I communicated my reluctance to finance her revised return arrangements whenever she decided to conclude her solo sojourn. This stance of mine triggered a strong reaction from her, characterized by accusations of unsupportiveness and selfishness for declining to facilitate the extension of her stay. To compound matters, when we sought counsel from mutual acquaintances, a faction sided with her, painting me as the antagonist for withdrawing financial support while she independently prolonged her Italian escapade. According to them, my stance left her stranded in a foreign land devoid of financial assistance, thereby tarnishing my image in their eyes. Thus, that encapsulates the entirety of the situation. What was meant to be an idyllic vacation unraveled into a conundrum, leaving me grappling with the burden of being perceived as the villain for asserting boundaries, a predicament that's proving to be quite arduous. So, Reddit, I seek your judgment. Am I in the wrong for refusing to foot the bill for her return journey after she opted to extend her trip without prior discussion? Update. Hey everyone, a big thank you to all of you who took the time to respond to my story, especially those of you who were quick to offer your thoughts and help me see things from an outside perspective. I'm starting to think that maybe I'm not the bad guy in this situation. Still, I'm not totally comfortable saying that I did nothing wrong because you're only hearing this from my side. It's only fair that I own up to any part one might have played in all of this. But what's really been an eye-opener for me is realizing something about my girlfriend's behavior I never quite noticed before. How skilled she is at making things that are actually pretty unreasonable seem totally normal and okay, and making me feel like I'm the one who's losing it or being unreasonable. It's been kind of a shock to see that maybe some of the stuff I thought was normal in our relationship isn't really that reasonable after all. This whole situation has made me start questioning things a bit more, wondering if some of the things I've been going along with aren't as fair or normal as I thought. So here's the update. I'm back in America now, and things are changing. My girlfriend is packing up her things to stay with her family for a while until she can figure out her next steps and find a new place to live. After I shared my story online, it was time to head to the airport. I'm one of those people who always gets to the airport super early because I'm always worried that something might go wrong and I'll be late, though usually everything goes just fine. But this time, with all the emotions I was feeling, I didn't want to take any chances with my luck. So there I was at the airport, about an hour early, all by myself. I spent that time thinking things over and talking to my mom on the phone. I glanced at a few responses to my post, but I didn't trust myself to reply without getting really emotional. And the last thing I wanted was to start crying in the middle of the airport. While I was talking to my mom, my girlfriend suddenly showed up at the airport. It looks like she thought I was just bluffing about not waiting for her. She got a pretty harsh reality check when the hotel staff kicked her out of the room because I had only paid up until that day. I have to admit I felt a bit of satisfaction seeing that she had been so focused on the plane ticket and arguing with me that she hadn't even thought about where she would stay after the hotel. As many of you guessed, she met someone while we were in Italy. She was quick to tell me that it was just a physical attraction and that they hadn't done anything, but she had his handle and was wanting to see if it had gone anywhere. I guess that's what I get for not feeling well and wanting to stay in one night while she went out to explore. Obviously, I told her things were over between us, even though she tried to make it sound like nothing had happened. The fact was I couldn't feel like I could trust her when she said that, and B, I don't really want to be with someone who feels like it's okay to still keep her options open when she's been in a monogamous relationship for the past 2 years. The flight home was awkward as freak, and she tried really hard to give another pitch for why we should stay together. On the drive home from the airport, I think as we got closer to home, reality started setting in, and she realized she'd just thrown a lot away. So yeah, I'm jet-lagged and physically and emotionally exhausted. I'm just kind of numb at this point. Finally, I didn't see all the comments as there are 25K at the time of this update, but to the few that were downvoted into oblivion who said this was fake because I hadn't updated in several hours, freak you. I was looking for reasonable dissenting opinions that might have helped me make sense of the situation, and you're accusing me of making this up for random internet points. Believe it or not, my priority was not to tell a bunch of strangers on the internet how my world was falling apart around me. I know it's easy to think that these people aren't real and their struggles are meaningless because screens divide us, but ironically, you're the jerks now. For a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. I'm sorry, friend. It sounds like this is the beginning of a breakup with her. Comments about finding herself and thinking about the relationship. She's not the jerk for considering breaking up with you because not all relationships work out, but she became the flaming jerk when she wanted you to bankroll her extended overseas holiday while she ponders whether or not she wants to keep seeing you or not. This will likely be difficult, but try to see this as an opportunity to suss out who your real friends are, as any sane person who is actually your friend will be outraged on your behalf, even if you were at Bill Gates levels of rich and the money meant nothing to you. It would be insanely rude for someone to ask you to bankroll their breakup with you. Comment 2. OP, you did not leave her stranded. You provided her with a fully paid-for plane ticket home, which she made the decision not to use. She made a decision that has financial ramifications for her. It is not your responsibility to fund an extended vacation she wants to take. That is her choice and for her to fund. For your friends, your only response needs to be, no, I did not leave her stranded anywhere. I provided her with a fully paid-for return ticket on the original date based upon the agreement we had at the start of our vacation, a vacation I funded. I am not her personal piggy bank. If she wants to extend the vacation, that is 100% her choice, but it is also for her to fully fund. Again, I am not her personal piggy bank. Now for the update. Thank you for sticking around for this mess of an update. After she moved out, got quiet for a while, I thought maybe that was it, the end of the drama. But life had other plans. A couple of weeks later, I found out she had been using my credit card to fund her extended stay. She racked up a hefty bill, and when confronted, she claimed it was an accident that my card details were saved on her laptop from before. Accident or not, it was the last straw for me. I filed a fraud report, and the bank started their investigation. Meanwhile, she had the nerve to show up at my place, crying, saying she was sorry and that she didn't mean for any of this to happen. She begged me not to press charges, saying it would ruin her life. I didn't budge. I was done being the nice guy. She left, and I thought that was the end of it. But then her brother called me, accusing me of trying to destroy her life over a simple mistake. He said I was overreacting and that family should stick together. I reminded him that she wasn't my family anymore and her actions had consequences. The bank sided with me, and she was forced to pay back every penny. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something else was coming, and I was right. Just when I thought I could move on, I got a call from a mutual friend. He told me that my ex had been spreading rumors about me, saying I was controlling and hurtful, that I'd kicked her out with nowhere to go. It was infuriating how she twisted the story. I had friends questioning me, doubting me. It took a lot of explaining and the support of a few close friends who knew the real story to clear my name. But the real shock came when I found out she was pregnant. She said it was mine, but the timeline didn't add up. I demanded a paternity test, and the waiting was agonizing. When the results came back, it was confirmed. I wasn't the father. It was a relief, but also a sad realization of how far she had gone, how much she had lied. Now she's out of my life, but the echoes of her deceit still linger. I'm trying to rebuild trust again, but it's hard. I keep wondering how I missed all the signs, how I let myself be manipulated. But I guess that's just how life goes sometimes. Thank you for reading this far into my personal soap opera story. 2. My sister uses my kids as free babysitters for her toddler and housemaids while she plays house with her boyfriend. So I step in and teach her a lesson in responsibility and respect. My sister, 21 years old, has 2 children aged 3 and 3.5 months and suffers from postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. I, 30 years old, female, have a 13-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter. School vacation just went by, and my sister asked if both of my children could go visit her for the week. I asked the kids, and they said they wanted to, so I said yes. Every single time my daughter faced high, she had my sister's 3-year-old. I didn't think too much of it at the time because my daughter loves this little girl very much. But by day 5, both my kids were asking me to come get them. I show up, and my sister starts begging me not to take the kids until Sunday, our original agreement, because having them here makes my anxiety go away. I simply told her the kids wanted to come home and left around dinner time. My daughter made a comment about how she had the 3-year-old the entire time she was there, to a point where I guess my sister even asked to have the 3-year-old sleep with my daughter so she could get up with her in the morning so she could sleep in. My daughter stated that the only time my sister came downstairs was to shower or make food for herself. The rest of the time, my kids were left to fend for themselves and take care of the 3-year-old, including meals. My sister's boyfriend lives there full-time and doesn't work either, so he never leaves. Therefore, there were 2 adults in the house, and neither of them watched their kid the entire time my kids were there. I guess there were also multiple times that my sister asked my daughter to clean the house. I didn't confront my sister originally because I didn't feel there was any point to it, but she just called my daughter about an hour ago, and my daughter says to me while still on the phone, and he wants to know if I can go back over there on Friday. I said, absolutely not, and went back to doing dishes. Then my daughter hands me the phone. It's my sister asking why my daughter can't go there Friday. So I say, because my daughter is not your maid or nanny. You made her wake up with your kid, take care of her all day, clean your house, and then put her to sleep at night. My daughter is 11. She will not be parented. Fide. My sister immediately starts crying and says it wasn't like that. She was just helping me. So I told her that both my kids wouldn't lie and tell me the exact same story if it didn't happen, and that PPD is not an excuse to pass on 100% of responsibilities off on a child, especially when her boyfriend was there full-time. Now she's basically saying it didn't happen like that, and that my kids were just helping her, and that she enjoyed having them there because the noise helped her not to panic. I told her it still wasn't happening, and she called me heartless and said, "This is the reason women with PPD don't ask for help." Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. She called me heartless and said, "This is the reason women with postpartum depression don't ask for help." Except that she didn't ask for help. She asked for your kids to go visit her, then put her in charge of childcare. Good for you for picking up your kids when they called, and then advocating for them when you heard what happened. Not the jerk. Comment 2. Not the jerk. Honestly, you said it best. My daughter is not your maid or nanny. Your children were excited to see their aunt before they went, then they asked to leave early. Where was the shift? Probably during all of the childcare they were forced into. Children should not be a primary source of childcare. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around for more on this. So the whole thing with my sister blew up even more after I hung up on her. She started texting me nonstop, saying I was being unfair and that I didn't understand her situation. I tried to be patient, but it was hard. I mean, she was trying to guilt trip me into sending my kids back into a situation that wasn't right for them. Then, out of nowhere, my son tells me he overheard my sister's boyfriend talking about how he was glad my kids were there because it meant he didn't have to deal with the crying and the diapers. That hit me like a ton of bricks. It wasn't just my sister using my kids. Her boyfriend was in on it too. They were both just sitting back while my kids did all the work. I was fuming. I decided to confront the boyfriend. I called him and asked straight up why he thought it was okay to let children take care of his responsibilities. He tried to deny it at first, but I wasn't having any of it. I told him that they were both adults and needed to act like it. He got defensive and hung up on me. A few days later, my sister calls me again, but this time she's sobbing. She tells me her boyfriend left her. He said he couldn't deal with the kids and her PPD and PPA anymore. I felt bad for her, but I also felt angry that he'd abandoned her like that. My sister was a mess, and now she was all alone with 2 kids. I didn't know what to do. I was torn between being there for her and protecting my own kids. But then my daughter, bless her heart, said she wanted to help her aunt but didn't want to be treated like a maid. That's when I had an idea. I called my sister back and laid down some ground rules. I told her I'd help her find a therapist and a support group for her PPD and PPA. I also said I'd come over with the kids, but only if she agreed to get up and take care of her own children while we were there. She agreed reluctantly, so we started going over there once a week. It was tough at first. My sister struggled to get out of bed and take care of her kids, but with some encouragement, she started to do better. It was a slow process, but I could see she was trying. Then just when things seemed to be getting on track, my sister did something I never saw coming. She accused me of trying to take her kids away from her. She said I was making her look bad in front of my kids and that I was the reason her boyfriend left. I was shocked. After everything I'd done to help her, she was turning it all around on me. I didn't know what to say. I felt betrayed. I had been there for her, and this was how she repaid me. I told her that wasn't true, that I was just trying to help her be a better mom, but she wouldn't listen. She told me to leave and not come back. I was heartbroken, but I respected her wishes. I took my kids and left. It was a quiet ride home. My kids were confused and upset, and I didn't have any answers for them. It was a mess. A week went by with no word from my sister. Then out of the blue, she shows up at my door. She's crying and apologizing. She tells me she got a wake-up call when her oldest started acting out because he missed his cousins. She realized she had pushed away the only person who was trying to help her. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, but I couldn't. She was still my sister, and she needed me. So I let her in, and we talked for hours. She promised to get help and to never take advantage of my kids again. It's been a month since then, and things are slowly getting better. My sister is seeing a therapist and going to support group meetings. She's taking care of her kids and even apologized to mine for everything that happened. It's not perfect, but it's a start. I guess sometimes people do things that hurt us, but it doesn't always mean they're bad people. They're just struggling and don't know how to ask for help. It's been a tough lesson to learn, but I'm glad my sister's on the path to recovery, and I'm glad I could be there for her even when it was hard. Thanks for reading. Now for story 3. My mom and her husband conspired to sell my inherited cabin behind my back, so I evicted them and sold it right out from under them. My dad bought a cabin before he married my mom. It became a family place for us when he married my mom, and they had me. And when he wrote his will, he left the cabin to me, not my mom. But my mom helped to look after it in the meantime, but full ownership goes to me when I turned 18. My dad died when I was 7, and my mom remarried when I was 10. My mom has 2 kids with her current husband, a 6-year-old female and a 3-year-old male. When my mom got engaged, I found out she was pregnant. She asked me if I would be okay with the cabin remaining for the family and including her husband and new baby. She wanted to keep it as the family vacation spot, but said if I would turn around once I owned it completely and say I didn't want her husband and kids to be there, then she wasn't going to ruin any memories for them or cause them some heartache by bringing them, knowing they would no longer be able to go in a few years. I told her I wouldn't want them to use it and wouldn't let it be used by her new family. She told me they were our family, not just hers. She saw I still didn't want to let it be for them as well, so she never took them there. Before Christmas, my mom let her sister-in-law and family stay in the cabin because they lost their house. Ever since then, my half-sister has been asking questions about it and wondering why she never goes there, etc. My mom told her it was mine, and she looked after it for me until I was an adult, and she wanted the family to be safe. So then my half-sister is asking when we're all going to go and why we don't ever stay there and how she wants to see it. My mom asked me if I had changed my mind yet, and I said, nope. So mom was trying to make my half-sister less upset about it, but she would ask questions once a week about the cabin and say she wanted to visit. This pissed off my mom's husband, who said it was ridiculous that a cabin was owned by the family and they couldn't use it. He said it around me once, and I told him it's not owned by the family, it's owned by me. My mom is now blaming me, saying it put everyone in a bad position because her in-laws stayed there, but she can't bring the kids. I told her that wasn't my fault, that she was the one who offered the cabin all by herself, and I had no say in it. She told me it was the right thing to do, and the right thing to do now would be to accept that my family has changed and let them all enjoy the cabin. I told her I can't stop her for the next 2 years, but it's not going to be used once I take full control. Mom and her husband both told me that wasn't the correct way to behave. They said I made my half-sister upset by letting her aunt, uncle, and cousin stay. I told Mom she let them stay, not me, and she needs to own it instead of blaming me. They were mad that it implied I would have refused to let them stay and that I don't see my actions as the root problem in everything. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around for more of my family drama. So after the whole cabin mess, things got even crazier. My mom's husband, let's call him Rick, started acting all nice to me out of nowhere. He was like, "Hey, let's go fishing," or "How about a guy day out?" I was suspicious, but I went along with it because it made my mom happy. But then one day, he took me out for pizza and dropped a shocker. He said he and my mom were thinking about buying a new house and wanted to sell the cabin to help pay for it. He said it like it was already decided, like I had no say in it. I was so mad I couldn't even eat. I told my mom what Rick said, and she acted all surprised. She said she didn't know he was going to talk to me about it, and that it was just an idea they were tossing around. But I could tell she wasn't being totally honest. She had that look she gets when she's hiding something. I felt betrayed. It was like they were teaming up against me, trying to take away the one thing my dad left for me. Then my aunt, the one who stayed in the cabin over Christmas, started talking about how much her kids loved it there and how it would be a shame if they couldn't make more memories. It felt like everyone was ganging up on me, trying to guilt me into giving up the cabin. But here's the kicker. My mom's sister-in-law, the one who stayed at the cabin, she's a real estate agent, and I overheard her talking to my mom about how much they could sell the cabin for. It was like they were planning it all along, using her family's misfortune as a way to get their hands on the cabin. I was so angry and hurt. I couldn't believe my mom would do this to me. But I didn't say anything. I just kept it all inside, pretending everything was fine. I didn't want to cause more trouble, especially with my little half-sister and brother around. They don't understand what's going on, and I don't want them to get caught up in it. And then, as if things couldn't get any worse, Rick did something that really shocked me. He apologized. He sat me down and said he was sorry for overstepping and that he didn't mean to upset me. He said he just wanted what was best for the family. I didn't know what to think. Part of me wanted to believe him, but another part of me remembered all the times he'd been sneaky before. So now I'm stuck. I don't want to lose the cabin, but I also don't want to be the bad guy in my family. I keep hoping things will get better, but deep down, I know they won't. Not really. And the worst part is, I feel like I'm the only one who sees what's really going on. Everyone else seems to think I should just let it go and move on. But I can't. That cabin is the last piece of my dad I have, and I'm not ready to give it up. Thanks for reading. Now for story 3, why we don't see Uncle Mark anymore. So this was told to me by my dad over a drink recently. He'd gotten a little drunk and ended up admitting it to me. Said it's been too long now, and he's paid the consequences, so there was nothing to come back on him. Only reason I'm posting this. Uncle Mark was my favorite uncle when I was a child. He always invited me around to show me his airsoft gun collection, hide and seek parties with my friends, and even took us to the beach. He would always come with sweets for us and acted like one of us, another child who just wanted to have fun. But then, the day I was 7 years old, was meant to be going around because we were going for a ride to this amazing place. My dad was happy and cheerful for the entire day. He was going on about how much he loved the fact his brother wanted to be in his children's life. Until he got a call. I was in my room packing my stuff when I heard the most blood-curdling scream from my dad. He was screaming and raging. I heard him rip open our front door and slam it back shut with enough force to make the picture next to it fall off the wall. I didn't see my dad for a long while after that, and he never told me why until we had this talk. But that shall be explained at the end. Mom had a lot of money saved up from a minor lotto win, so we were okay, and she always smiled and said Daddy is just away for a little while because he was looking after me and my siblings whenever I asked where he was. Uncle Mark didn't come around either during this time, but we did see him in town a couple of times. Funnily enough, He ran away the moment my mom saw me waving at him. 9 months later, Dad came home, and I excitedly ran and hugged him. He hugged me right on back with a good squeeze. We had a party to celebrate him coming home. We had party food and cake and all the usual stuff. I was just happy my dad was home. Though, a week or so later, Dad sat me down with the other children and explained that Uncle Mark wouldn't be coming around anymore. When asked why, he just said Uncle Mark was a bad person and that if he ever tried to talk to us, we were to ignore him and come find one of them. We all agreed because my dad always knew best. After all, one day, a year or so later, I was 9 at this point. I'm coming out of school to wait for my parents to pick me up. My other siblings were either at secondary school or too young for school, so it was just me. I see Uncle Mark stood there with a big grin. I get nervous when he comes up to me, saying he's here to take me for a ride. I tell him I'm not supposed to talk to him, that he's a bad person like my dad said. Uncle Mark got this scary look on his face for a second, then told me it was all good, and his parents had changed their mind and made to take my hand. That's when I saw my dad just appear. My dad punched Uncle Mark right in the face, and little old me saw blood fly as Uncle Mark went sprawling. I didn't see much after that except Uncle Mark running away with my dad chasing him. He came back after a little while, sighed, and took me in a hug. He told my mom to take me home and that he'd see us later. I don't know why, but I knew there, and then it would be a long time before I ever saw my dad again, and I was right. 5 years. 5 years my dad was gone. My mom eventually admitted to us that he was in prison for protecting us, and we all guessed he'd done something to Uncle Mark, and he had. Turns out, Uncle Mark liked kids. He liked them a lot. And that day I was meant to go to his house. My aunt, Uncle Mark's wife, had called my dad and told him she'd found some pictures under her and Mark's bed of children, and she was scared of what to do because Mark was a big man. And it was later revealed he abused her, so she was scared to call the police on him. And my dad had gone into a rage and stormed over to his house. He'd smashed in the door to find Uncle Mark screaming at my aunt as she waved the pictures around in hysterics. My dad had beaten Uncle Mark within an inch of his life. Uncle Mark screaming he'd make him pay as the police had arrested my dad. Messed up thing was, by the time my dad had explained why he had done it, Mark managed to get the pictures, burn them, and scared his wife into saying nothing. So there was no evidence. My dad was sent down for assault, but made sure my other uncles and older cousins were around to protect us in case Mark came back. But oh no, Mark waited until my dad thought we were safe and then, according to my dad, had come to kidnap me from the school right under their noses. Who would stop him? People didn't believe my dad when he explained Mark was a predator. They thought he was just excusing himself for attacking him. After all, the police hadn't found anything, and his wife said my dad was a liar. Whereas my dad was the big angry guy with a few assaults under his belt already, so all they saw was my nice uncle here to pick me up. He had gotten away from my dad at the school. My dad had tripped, and it gave him the chance to run. But my dad knew where he would go. Knew Uncle Mark would run home to hide and more than likely destroy any evidence he had gotten since destroying the last lot. He also knew the police would be on his tail for the attack on the school, so he didn't have long. Difference was, though, my dad had his car while Uncle Mark was on foot. So he drove over and demanded to know if my aunt was going to lie again after what Uncle Mark had just tried to pull. Despite my dwindling affection for my aunt due to her past actions, I believe she genuinely grasped the true nature of my uncle during that pivotal moment. Witnessing his willingness to harm her own nephew merely for petty retribution after being exposed as a predator was a stark revelation. She admitted she wouldn't intervene or protect Mark this time. Instructed by my father, she gathered as much evidence as possible while he awaited Mark's arrival. Returning with an abundance of photographs, she was then directed to wait an hour before contacting the authorities. My father was resolute in putting an end to this ordeal. Concealed behind his garden wall, he swiftly confronted Uncle Mark as he appeared, forcefully propelling him through the doorway and subsequently engaging in a fatal altercation. By the end, the floor was reportedly obscured by blood. My father accepted his arrest for murder without resistance, expressing only a wish that law enforcement had intervened sooner. However, upon revelation of Uncle Mark's predatory nature and attempted abduction of me, coupled with the realization that they had allowed a dangerous individual to roam freely, my father's charge was reduced to manslaughter. His legal team argued that his actions stemmed from a protective instinct, aiming only to neutralize the threat. Curiously, no one advocated for the predator's defense. Despite his acceptance of the murder charges, my father admitted to harboring a degree of regret, lamenting the lost time with me. I reassured him of my eternal pride and love. Reflecting on the delayed disclosure of Uncle Mark's true character, I pondered whether knowing earlier would have made any difference. My father posited that as a child, I might not have been equipped to process such information. Even now, grappling with the truth remains a challenge.